Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about the Atlanta Falcons 2018 NFL Draft Class based on analytics. And in this video, we're going to look at every single player in this class that the Falcons drafted based on production and athleticism data to determine what their potential upside is at the next level. If you're new to the channel and new to the work that I do, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So if you're not familiar with what market share data is, explosive lower body strength score, speed score, flexibility score, and all those other types of things, you can just go to the description. You can also watch previous videos I've done in the past if you want to get more familiar with the stuff that I'm talking about. But the bottom line is we're going to look to see how everybody in this draft class performed based on what the traits were on paper of past successful players. And with all that stuff out of the way, let's get to the first pick of the draft for the Falcons, and Calvin Ridley, wide receiver out of Alabama. When you look at his production data, he had a 78.99 passing yardage market share production score. Doesn't quite hit the 5-time All-Pro or 3-time All-Pro threshold, but does hit at least above the 3-time Pro Bowl threshold. And when you look at the averages at the position, he looks closer to the starter average than the Pro Bowl and All-Pro average, but still pretty solid all-around production. So I think there's a very good shot that Calvin Ridley, based on his production data, could end up becoming a long-term starter. Athleticism-wise, has a 5.15 explosive lower body strength score, 61.32 speed score, and 41.08 flexibility score. Doesn't quite have great all-around athleticism, which is why the Spark guys don't like him. But when you look at his data individually, and you look at past wide receivers, every vast majority of multiple All-Pro/Pro Bowl wide receivers had at least one above 54 or higher athleticism trait. And when it comes to Calvin Ridley, he does have one in terms of his speed for his size. So that's the big thing with Calvin Ridley is he doesn't have great explosiveness, he doesn't have great balance for his size, but he definitely has good speed traits for his size. And of course, you get to the age question. He definitely has issues in terms of his age coming out. His age score is 19.78 out of 100. All-Pro wide receivers since 1999 had at least a 80 or higher age score, and all Pro Bowl wide receivers had at least a 51 or higher age score. So it's very unlikely that Calvin Ridley becomes a multiple All-Pro/Pro Bowl wide receiver, but that doesn't mean he can't become a long-term starter. And just so you guys know, this is a comparison between Calvin Ridley and Amari Cooper and Julio Jones, because I know a lot of people have talked about Calvin Ridley as the next come-up type of guy, but I think it's pretty clear based on the data that Julio Jones and Cooper were more productive and more athletic than him, and also much younger prospects in general. Not even getting into physical characteristics like height and physical mismatch stuff. Bottom line is Calvin Ridley is he's just not comparable to Cooper, to Jones, etc. But definitely someone that does have a chance to become a long-term starter. Then, of course, you get to Isaiah Oliver, cornerback out of Colorado. When you look at his production data, 11.76 in terms of solo tackle data, 75.53 in terms of pass deflection data. The only question mark is his solo tackle data. Very good pass deflection data, though. Again, above what the Pro Bowl average score is in terms of pass deflection data, but his solo tackle data is kind of the biggest sort of question mark with him. And when it comes to athleticism traits, only had one in terms of his speed score, 70.33 out of 100. So he definitely has some Pro Bowl potential based on his speed score. We don't have the rest of his testing to really determine much, so we don't have like the short shuttle and the 3-cone or the vertical and the broad jump to determine his explosiveness, but definitely has a solid all-around profile. I think it's very likely that he becomes a long-term starter, and I think outlier as a Pro Bowler is definitely there as well. So definitely has some intriguing sort of physical traits as well in terms of arm length and stuff like that. So we'll see what happens with Isaiah Oliver. But right now there just is a lot of lack. There's a lack of missing information. There's a lot of missing information here when it comes to him. And of course, we get to Dedrin Snat, defensive tackle out of USF. When it comes to athleticism data, he had a 53.13 explosive lower body strength score, 74.90 speed score, and 68.12 flexibility score. So great athleticism traits, Pro Bowl level athleticism traits in many ways. But when you get to his production data, 88.62 in terms of solo tackle data, 43.29 in terms of sack data, and 44.94 in terms of tackle for loss data. Doesn't quite hit the Pro Bowl threshold 100%. And when you look at the averages at the position, well below what the average sack score and TFL score is for a long-term starter or Pro Bowl player. But there definitely is some upside here. I think when it comes to Snat, he could become a long-term starter, or he could be better than that. But bottom line is, I think he has a pretty decent floor, but does have some question marks in terms of sack data and TFL data. Then, of course, we get to Ito Smith, running back out of Southern Miss. When you look at his production data, 77.42 in terms of market share data. Doesn't quite hit the All-Pro threshold, but does hit at least above the 5-time Pro Bowl threshold and 3-time Pro Bowl threshold. Looking at his production data, he looks at least close to the Pro Bowl average. You know, he's above what the Pro Bowl average is, and the starter average in terms of his production data, so that's pretty solid as well. Athleticism-wise, he lacks All-Pro/Pro Bowl athleticism traits. 100% of multiple All-Pro/Pro Bowl running backs since 1999 had at least a 79 or higher athleticism trait. And Ito Smith doesn't have any one of those, but he does have some above-average athleticism traits, though. You know, 71.05 speed score, 52.06 explosion score. So he does have some athleticism traits. It's just that he doesn't have one that is All-Pro/Pro Bowl level. Bottom line is, when it comes to Ito Smith, good chance to become a rotational back, maybe becomes like a fringe starter, spot starter type, but definitely not someone that is going to end up becoming a five-time All-Pro, 3-time All-Pro type, based on his production, based on his athleticism traits. And of course, we get to Russell Gage, wide receiver at LSU. Based on his production data, 16.18 out of 100. There's never been a long-term starting wide receiver with as low of a production score as this, with the exception of players that didn't even play wide receiver in college. So Antoine Randall, Julian Edelman, those are the types of wide receivers that scored as low as Russell Gage and went on to become successful players. So that's kind of a big question mark here, especially when you get to the average scores of a starter, All-Pro, and Pro Bowl player, well below what those averages are. Athleticism trait-wise, he doesn't even have All-Pro/Pro Bowl level athleticism traits for his size. Only 53.27 explosive lower body strength score, 35.62 speed score, and 30.92 flexibility score. So however you slice it, Russell Gage just looks kind of like a dud as a wide receiver. Maybe he's a special teams player, but again, when you look at the overall data, there's just lots of question marks here from a production standpoint and from an athleticism standpoint. Then, of course, we get to Foyi Oleokun, linebacker out of Yale. When you get to his athleticism trait, 69.19 in terms of explosiveness, 92.02 in terms of speed, and 90.44 in terms of flexibility for his size. Pro Bowl level athleticism traits in many ways. Production-wise, because it was at lower level competition, I'm not really going to include it because all my models are based on FBS production, and comparing FCS production to FBS production is not that great in terms of projection. So that's just something that you just have to wait on in many ways. But overall, pretty good athlete. I think there's a shot that he could end up becoming a long-term starter or better. And then we know why they drafted him. It was mainly based on his athleticism traits that are very, very impressive. So overall, when you look at the Atlanta Falcons draft class, in general, I do think this is a solid class. I think Calvin Ridley has a chance to become a long-term starter. Isaiah Oliver has a good chance to become a long-term starter. Sinad has a good chance to become a long-term starter. But at the same time, there's not a lot of high-quality upside here. So there's not a ton of players in this draft class that check all the boxes of what prior All-Pro and Pro Bowl players typically performed in terms of their overall data. So that's the only real question mark here, is I do think that there's a lot of players in this class that could become successful long-term starters, but not a ton of meat, high qualityness to it. So we'll see what happens in this class, but that's just kind of the basics in terms of it. So let me know in the comments section below, how do you believe the Atlanta Falcons did in terms of this draft class? And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know. Hit that notification button so you're always reminded when another video of mine drops. And I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Peace!